Tonight's chapter of Hypercosmic Odyssey is called Make Haste. 3 months after the Orpheus docked on the starport of Chienson, the ship still sits, unmoving and powered down. Nobody exited the gargantuan coal-black ship for the first 7 weeks. The first party that appeared from the long, wide ramp that had extended down to the ground was a small one, no more than 6. Each wore black cloaks and head shawls that entirely covered their faces and spoke to no one. As curious as any of the citizens within the colony, Lifter made it his business to keep an eye on the doings of these newcomers. The first group of black-cloaked voiders did nothing more than walk around the colony, examining buildings. They spoke to nobody, they purchased nothing, and the only place they lingered for more than a minute was on the street outside of the orphanage. No attempt was made to enter the building. Their pace was steady and constant. If any communication passed within the group, Lifter's scouts were unable to discern it. The group returned to the starport 6 hours after they'd began their tour and had been let in by another extension of the ramp. Later, Lifter had heard from Sam Nee that commanders from within the PMAC garrison were beginning to get anxious about the ship's reason for being on the colony. They had apparently sent 3 military envoys to the starport to speak with the Orpheus's captain. During none of the efforts did anyone exit the ship. When the PMAC attempted to convince the leaders of the Port Guild to force impound on the Orpheus, they were informed that the ship's docking fees had been paid for another 2 years. The second collection of voiders that appeared from the Orpheus came 2 weeks after the first. The cold, bitter chill of winter had just begun to fade, and the toxic snow had all but melted away. The second collection was larger than the first by 3 times. 18 monks of the Void exited the Orpheus and walked directly to the orphanage. Upon arrival, the Voiders spread out in a large circle around the grounds of the building at intervals of 20 feet. Talk had spread quickly throughout the colony of the happenings, but Nux hadn't seen it in person. He was smart enough to know that Ramsey and Dell would look for him there. Instead, he'd watched the proceedings with Lifter from the safety of the scrap bank. Security camera feeds from across the colony had projected images of the 18 Void monks all kneeling in the mud. Each held their head up towards the sky, and in sync repeatedly made the sign of the Void that Nux was familiar with. What surprised him, however, was a secondary hand motion at the end of the normal circle, which was a violent thrust forward of the palm into the air in front of them. During the ritual, the keepers of the orphanage were seen to deliver food stocks in sacks and buckets to the monks at different intervals throughout the day. All the children of the orphanage were seen playing joyfully in the great walled yard out front of the building. It took very little time for a military presence to appear in the collection of a brigade of 24 PMAC armed and armored soldiers. There was no violence, as the brigade kept to the sides and simply monitored the situation for any sort of unrest. Hours after the monks arrived, they finished their rituals, all at the same time, stood up, collected their food, fell into line, and walked back to the Orpheus. Upon returning to the ship, the 18 were stopped by a Gallipol Marshal Commandant and his personal squadron of 24 PMAC soldiers. At this point, the 18 Void monks were caught between 2 military brigades and more than doubly outnumbered. Sam Nee had informed Lifter and Nux in later that when the commander threatened to refuse their entry to the Orpheus upon classification of an occupying force, he had simply been provided documents drawing on information proving church ownership of not only the orphanage, but the 3 city blocks surrounding it as well. Secondary documents had been provided of the Olympus Vaughan Religious Persecution Act of 2262, stating that no galactic nations or military-controlled organizations would hold purview over arriving religious groups unless a clear statement of violence had been initiated. As none such order of violence had been, the Gallipo Marshal Commandant and the PMAC were forced to retreat to their garrison. At that point, the 18 monks entered the Orpheus, and no further activity was seen from the ship for another 4 weeks. Starting on May 5th, a group of 18 void monks departed the Orpheus every morning before dawn. Each group was accompanied by a floating construction platform stacked with sheet metal, steel girders, power tools, and everything else needed to build a temporary shelter. For 7 days straight, another group appeared, and each time they exited the Orpheus, they went directly to the orphanage. For days, the people of Qianshan watched as 14 separate small, squat metal buildings were built up within the courtyard of the orphanage and in the streets around it. Following protocol, a stationary presence was instigated by the PMAC, wherein a 24-hour watch was conducted on the location. It is now May 12th, 2387. So,
so if it's 96 days, this is actually one of the longest stints Nux has had on ground, and it happens to be one of the, it happens to be the place he's most familiar with. I think as a matter of order, he's definitely going to seek all of the help that he can possibly muster from Lifter to make sure that he is as camouflaged and safe as possible. I imagine that means that he gets one of those facial recognition masks from Lifter, and maybe he's running little missions, little errands for him to pay off the debt associated with anything that he accrues. His hair would have grown out quite a bit by now. But yeah, he's had a lot of time to think about Ramsey and what he chose to do. He doesn't hold judgment to Ramsey because conceptually he understands that family is so important, and in a way he understands that it was family that drove him to almost kill Dell. So he's like, oh yeah, I sympathize with that. So he actually has no remorse for Ramsey, but he understands that the next time he runs into him, it will be he's actually kind of dreading it. He's in a state where for the first time he has knots in his stomach because he does feel bad that he let go of Catch, but he also understands that Ramsey has no fucking clue what he was dealing with in the moment because he didn't expect to see Catch again. He didn't expect to see the world again. So all those thoughts are running through his head. He's built up a nice little enclave in his uncle's siege. Oh, that's a good word, siege. It's funny. I was thinking about that word, but yeah, the siege. That little, I don't know. We'll just call him like his safe house. Nux remembers the stories of them going to different places and essentially liberating places, and what they're doing. He realizes as an older kid, he's like, oh shit, that's their form of proselytizing. And he's like, okay, so they've been here. The position that they're in is creating a shadow that the whole colony is reacting to. And he's like basically trying to find out as much as he can. Are they actually here for Keeper's Thief? Is that actually what they're doing? And he works with Lifter to try and find that out.
So he's definitely like everything that Lifter attempts to do. Like every single scout that Lifter sends out to try to get any kind of information returns absolutely nothing. None of the monks speak at all. There's absolutely no communication. Like when they go and they stand around listening to them build their houses, there's absolutely nothing but silence.
And so the monks that are building the houses, so Nux is going to try and figure out, like, you said they have a secondary crew that's helping build?
It's just like, it's 7 groups of 18 that have been building.
Okay, so it's multiples.
14 houses.
And the 18 come from the Orpheus?
Yeah, but it's 18 times 7. So hold on.
So they're not hiring local people is what you're saying? Okay. So
it's 100, it's 120, it's 126 people dressed in black that aren't speaking to anybody that are building temporary shelters in the streets around the orphanage.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool.
They're not taking over anything. It's like pretty much abandoned area. They're just they're doing it in the streets. And the lifter's connection to the Gallipole is Sam Nee, and she's already given him everything that she's got.
Okay, so they're not actually offering much more. They're just kind of like quietly watching in the back kind of thing. Can we determine whether or not Sif has been lifted off colony? Because I know that was supposed to happen within, I think, 1 month.
Yeah, three, and you're almost at the 3-month mark. And Lifter has had eyes on the starport for any departing prisoner ships, and there has been none.
Yeah, and Sam Nee actually doesn't have the clearance level required to learn about that, right? Like whether or not Sif is on port for transit, right?
Right, but there haven't been any ships that have left, so there's no reason.
Okay, so Nuxon spending the time, you said 96 days?
Yeah.
Okay, so over the time of 96 days, number one thing is securing camouflage. Number two thing is understanding whether or not Sif is going to be lifted. He understands that that's not the case. He's watching the Orpheus, and sometimes he like looks up at it as he's going about his day, and he's just remembering when Ramsey and him saw it together, and he's just got this like knot forming in his stomach because he really doesn't want to encounter Ramsey on the other side. And he feels like that's the only kind of interaction they're going to have. In a way, he actually doesn't fear Del at all. He actually just flat out fears Ramsey. But over the course of time, it's just like you said in the narration, he definitely understands that Ramsey would have told Del that he's alive and Nux is out there. So he's actually more cautious about being seen in public than he ever was before. He would love to spend more time with Savant and Juvia and just kind of bro down with them and find out as much as he can about technology and what Savant knows and what kind of things Savant would be willing to help him with or teach him with. I imagine they've probably gone on at least, I don't know, I guess what's Lifter got going on while they're in the shadow of the Orpheus?
Let's do one at a time so I don't get lost.
All right, so
let me write all this down.
Yeah, I mean I can see the when you say 96 days, I'm like, oh shit, that's a long time. I can do a lot then.
Yes, you got 3 months. So.
I mean, I think Nux and Nux doesn't want to be seen out with Pusher, but he definitely tries to spend time with him as much as he can to kind of like see what Pusher's point of view is on the colony and just how he stayed alive for as long as he has, because he remembers Pusher when he was a kid and he doesn't look like he's aged a day. He'll wear the jacket sometimes maybe, but he never wears the jacket when he's like, it's basically just for Pusher. He just does it for Pusher. It's like, daddy figure kind of thing. I think he probably wouldn't get in touch with the boys because he knows they're okay now, and gave him her word that they'll be fine. You don't have to worry about them. So in a way, he kind of wants to let his memories start to fade with them, and he'll when he feels like he's in a safe place, he'll return to the orphanage in that capacity. But now that he knows that Ramsey knows that he's alive, he's not moving into places that he knows they'll be watching, because Ramsey knows his connection to the church, and he's not gonna fuck around and get caught that way. So maybe he only starts moving at night or in off hours. And let's say, I think at some point he'll sneak into the orphanage with his +2 mobility. What do you think he would have been doing? Like, you think Lifter would have had him going on missions, or is that too dangerous? Like, what would have Lifter done with Nux in this time?
Early on, when Nux goes to visit Lifter and sort of basically walk him through what happened with Ramsey and explain to him, that like I'm pretty much a, target on this colony and that there's people looking for me. Lifter offers to rent out one of his facial manipulators to Nux, and he's just like, "Take this, boy. You can pay me out of your paychecks for the little jobs that we do. I've got some courier business coming up soon that you might be able to handle. Nothing dangerous or violent, simply carrying a package from location to location."
He's like, "Yeah, Lifter, it's whatever it takes. Thank you."
I think that one of these might do you a little bit good too. And he walks over to this cabinet and like pulls the double doors open and pulls one of the sort of drawers out, and then unfurls this sort of like sequined vest, and he hands it to Nux, and it's this like teal sequined vest, and he goes, "It's bulletproof. It's a riot vest. You can wear it underneath your clothes. It's very thin." And
then Nux kind of like holds it very gingerly and he's like looking at Lifter, and he's like, "You think I'm gonna need this?"
Well, you're the one that told me you're being hunted by the police.
Yeah, and then Nux just kind of like starts putting it on right in front of him. He's just like, "Welcome home, I guess."
They've shown themselves to be very quick on the trigger. I just don't want you to leave the colony in a less than ideal fashion.
I agree with that. I would not want to be space debris. What do you recommend for armament? And he's like feeling the weight of the simple fact that Ramsey chose to do this.
You've still got the pistol I gave you, right?
I do.
You're still sort of a small fry. I feel like you walking around the colony with anything much larger than that might draw ill attention you're not looking for.
You're not wrong, and I definitely don't want to draw attention. Thank you, Lifter. He kind of just like looks at Lifter. He's like, how many times have you seen the Orpheus?
I've seen this particular ship only 3 times in the 65 years that I've lived here.
And then Nux kind of like looks down, like he's like watching the screen very intently. And he goes, what were they here for the last 2 times?
Church business, I'm not quite sure. But they have a... My boy, I don't want to offend you. I know it's your religion. Can I speak plainly?
And Nux is like, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Lifter sort of like takes a seat on the like 70s style blood orange crushed red couch that's like running along the edge of one of the walls in the scrap bank, and like crosses their legs and lights a cigarette and goes, the Orpheus and its sister ships have a delicate history. There are many rumors only, mind you, that wherever these ships go, they bring death. Death for one, or death for many, I'm not sure, but there are plenty of talks that even members of the Pirates Guild avoid them. Why they're here, and why they've been here for so long, I could not say.
Yeah, and Nux just kind of like watches the screen and just sees how much confidence the monks have, and he's just starting to realize that the stories that he heard as a kid that seemed like they were cool hero stories may not be quite that. And he like looks at Lifter, knowing how measured they were and the way they just talked about it, and he kind of asks point blank, should we worry?
Very casually, Lifter just kind of shrugs and goes, personally, I'm not quite worried. I've been here for a very long time, and that orphanage and your religion has always seemed odd to me, but it's never caused me any problems.
I seem to feel the same way. I'm just very unsure of the things I've been reading.
Lifter kind of taps into his little like Hexanet compad, and this holographic screen pulls up, and he basically just like fucking runs a Google search for the Hastener's Fist, and all of these like conspiracy theory websites start popping up where Nux sees these headlines of like religious cult wipes out small colony, like religious cult lands on space station and everybody goes missing. Like there's all of these like dark rumors, but there's no evidence to back any of it up. And there's people that were like, I was abducted by, you know, like my 300 days in like a death cult, and like they're like talking about
sweet. they got I love that they have spam posts.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's like you said that was the Hastener's Fist, so cool. What is officially mentioned about their, like, so if that's what's going on in the subnet, like what's the official top of line?
They're like, the official outlook is that they are an extremist, far wing cult level of an established religion. Okay. And that
so the colonies, colonies that they visit specifically, like what, or is it like they say they wiped out a colony, but then like, you know, like PMAC News or WideNet News is like, oh, there was no one there, or the Hasteners never went there. That colony.
There's no evidence. There's no evidence of them ever being there.
Okay. Damn.
So it's just talk. It's scary. Just space talk. And then there's also like news reports of because it's the Hastener's fist, it's the Hastener's eye, and it's the Hastener's mouth. The Hastener's fist, the Hastener's eye, and the Hastener's voice. Those are the 3 ships. And you see like there's news reports from maybe like a year ago where members from the Hastener's fist, which were dubbed Void Guard, got into a small skirmish with a desert colony, and a battalion of PMAX ships had to go out to break it up. And by the time they got there, the ship had departed, and the remaining Hasteners that were there were rounded up and like treated as like terrorists. So they have a bad reputation. So Nux is working with a level of consternation now because, he's just realizing, the childhood ideas of what this could be or what the Hasteners actually do and who they are is definitely sullied the more he spends time with Lifter, which isn't bad. It's just, growing up. Knowing that there's no official record of the things that they've been doing outside of, like maybe these few skirmishes, it's clear that there's no solid evidence of them doing any.
Okay, so they're very shady.
Fully like terrible crimes, but there are like plenty of evidence of petty crimes, and then also a bunch of fucking shady ass rumors.
Is there an organization that you would describe them as in our relation? Like, are they Al Qaeda? Are they like because it doesn't seem like they take. They kind of show up in opportune moments. Like they take advantage of opportunities. Is that how?
They are what gives the Order of the Divine Void a bad name. Like when people like look down their nose at the religion and like think of it as a death cult, they're thinking of these guys. Because think of like Twitter. It's this small group is the loudest voice on Twitter.
Yeah, right.
And so it's this small group of like zealots, and they're like, we're gonna go around and we're gonna fuck shit up because that's what our like belief is. We're trying to bring about the end of everything. So like they walk the walk and they talk the talk. Like wherever they go, they cause problems. But like there are rumors that they've caused really bad problems, but those things have not been proven. Maybe like the mob, but like if the mob didn't ask for money, Yeah.
Like, so that they're self-perpetuating. They have some source that keeps them going. But out of curiosity, if we're talking about the origins of the Order of the Void, the Divine Void, who's first? Were there Hasteners first? Were there Enduring first? Like was there actually a sect first, or is it like so old that we can never know the origins?
Well, I said that it started off as an offshoot of atheism, an offshoot of atheism, because like atheism is God doesn't exist, and then over the course of like 300 years out in space on space stations, like it twists things. So like the religion is maybe 250 years old.
Okay, it's not that old.
So like it's like Mormon. They're like Mormons. They're like fucking death Mormons, basically. So just how like Mormons have they're like, no, we're just the regular Mormons, and then there's the like fucking Mormons that are all like polygamists and like fucking right-wing cultists. Like that's these guys.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
And like when people think of Mormons, they think of fucking polygamists.
They think of the crazy ones. Yeah, exactly. Not the ones that you're going to run into, at a Starbucks. Actually, they don't drink caffeine. But.
Right. And so I guess that would be the closest comparison.
Okay. All right. So yeah, it sounds to me like they're opportunists to hasten entropy, but they are also not provocative. They do their thing. They operate in their own sphere. Sometimes they get in trouble, but otherwise they're not a terrorist organization. They're just perceived as being pretty fucking shady. Okay. That helps. Let me think. Okay. So knowing that, all right. So Nux's ideas of the Hasteners is evolving. Knowing that Seif is one, he's almost kind of like surprised hearing like the rumors and ideas, because Seif has always been so kind to him. And but he starts to realize that her methodology might have just been like, the more orphans we take care of, the faster we hasten empathy, and that also makes total sense to him. Entropy,
or the more orphans we have, the more fucking hasten her fists, fucking void monks we can.
True. So which is the one that landed here? Is this the Hastener's Fist, the Orpheus, or is this
Hastener's Fist? Yeah.
Okay, so this one's probably been seen the most, or
this one has been seen 3 times here
just
on the colony,
yeah. But like, does it pop up in other
No, there's like one mention of the Hastener's Fist. Like it's like almost all the Hastener's eye, and then like a little bit of the Hastener's voiced, and then like just edges of Hastener's Fist. Yeah. So after he, after Lifter gives Nux the vest and they talk about everything, he basically offers. He goes, I've got a gift for Juvia. It's her birthday coming up, and I was hoping that you could bring it to her for me. I would give you 300 credits. It's quite an easy job.
Nux, he kind of like looks. He's like Lifter, and he's just like, deliver a birthday gift. I got you.
And he's like, thank you, my boy. And he like goes over. He gets up off the couch and goes over and opens up a closet and pulls out this little like perfectly wrapped, like just 3-inch tall, 5-inch long rectangle, and hands it to Nux. It's got a little bow on it.
Oh, he's like, Lifter, I didn't know you had this in you.
He's like, I'm full of surprises. You should know that by now.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that.
And Nux roll a mobility to make it through the city with his facial scan disguise successfully to Savant and Juvia's apartment.
Okay, so I gotta get my character sheet up and mobility. All right.
Oh yeah. So as expected, Nux very easily departs the scrap bank, passing by Pusher, who's hanging out in the sort of lounge, and he waves at Nux like, "Hey bud, have a good one. Call me later call me later if you need anything." And Nux gets out onto the city streets, and he even walks past a group of the Void Monks, and he sees that, from head to toe, they're completely covered. They've got black leather gloves on their hands, black leather feet, and they sort of walk with this like eerie calm hunch almost, where it's like they're looking down at the ground as they move forward, and none of them turn to look at Nux as he moves past. And Nux isn't trying to really make eye contact with anybody anyways because of the nature of that holographic fucking sheen over his face. But he makes it to their apartment, and it's sort of closer to the city center a lot. It's definitely in like the nicer part of town, closer to the garrison and where all of the shops are and the diner is. And when he gets to their apartment, Savant opens the door and is like, "Oh, hey Nux, what are you doing here, man?"
Oh, hey, Savant, I got something for someone's birthday. And he kind of like hints at what's like hiding under his coat because he didn't want to draw attention.
And from somewhere within the apartment, Nux hears Juvia like, "You got me a present, Nux?"
and Nux just like a blush comes to his face. Like his face flushes automatically, even though he's like, can I just come inside, please?
Savant's like, "Yeah, come on inside, bud. Come on. Why
and then
are you wearing that
Nux,
mask?"
Oh yeah. Oh wait, did Savant recognize him through the mask? Oh, that'd be cool, dude. Like he's just like on another level.
Yeah, Savant's got fucking glasses that are fucking pimped out.
Okay,
we're actually about to do something cool with him. I was hoping that you wanted to spend some solo time with him.
Oh man, they're great. But yeah, all right. So Nux comes in and he's just like, "Can you keep your voice down? I'm not trying to draw attention."
Oh, hey, sorry, bud, sorry.
And then he's like, this is from Lifter. And then he kind of like pulls out his bag. He's like, "Happy birthday, Juvia."
And she comes out from the bathroom, and she's got pajama shirt on, and it's got like a unicorn on the chest and like pajama shorts. And she must have just taken a shower because she's washing her hair, or she's drying her hair. And so she's like, "Oh my goodness," and like walks over and she takes the package from Nux and she goes, "Do you know what it is?"
And Nux just kind of like bashfully looks away from her in her like disheveled, like half undressed state. And he's just like, no, I don't.
She's like, what about you? And Savant's like, I got no idea. And she goes, all right, well, I guess we're going to find out. And she like just rips it apart. And on the inside, you see that there's just this like really beautiful set of like silver brass knuckles. And each knuckle has this like diamond inlaid into it. And she's like, oh my gosh. And like she picks it up and she's like, it's beautiful. And like slides it onto like one of her like big ass hands and like flexes it. And like Nux sees that like getting punched by this thing would not be good. And she starts like kind of like hopping up and down, like doing little like little kicks, and then like just throwing out fucking shadow punches like really fast for a person her size.
Whoa. And then Nux just kind of like he's like taking in the wind of her punches. Yeah. And he's just like he's blushing even more because like something about the power that she's exhibiting is something he's never had, and he's just like drawn to that. And so he's just like staring in like silence, and he's like, I had no idea you could move that fast.
She's like, yeah, that's the secret, no one does.
And then he's like, yeah, I can see why Lifter keeps you around.
And she looks at Nux when she's done, and she's like, hey, I was thinking about making some pancakes. You want some?
He's like, I'll have whatever it takes to get to that level. And he just like chuckles.
And she looks at Savant. She's like, pancakes? And he's like, load them up. And he goes, and she's like, yeah. She turns around and like heads off into the kitchen, like doing like this kind of like little shadow punch with her diamond thing, putting it back and forth on different knuckles. And Savant's like, hey, speaking of gifts, I actually made you something.
And like Nux is kind of like, he's like, it's not my birthday.
He was like, no, I don't really know when your birthday is. But, you know, when we did the heist and we hung out back then, you were so interested in the, you know, my deck that I built and what I was using. Thought I'd I don't know, hook you up. And like he like reaches into like a pocket and pulls out this like, Nux recognizes that at some point it was an Odessan sliver, but Savant has fucking like broken it and like hacked it, and like now it's got all of these like things sticking off of it, and like a like actual like little digital screen, like a modern day watch. And he goes, this is a Chopdex. And he hands it to Nux, and he goes, this is gonna help you out if you get in any small to medium jams with electronics. It's not gonna take you as far as what I've got, but if you're gonna be sneaking into fucking police stations for us, I want you lock, stocked, and ready to rock, and this is my contribution to the team. So here you go, kid.
And then Nux he graciously takes it, understanding how much work into it went into it. He's like holding it up and like inspecting it. And he's just like, Savant, I don't know how to pay you back for this, man.
He goes, you want to pay me back? You make sure that the next big job we do, I'm on it, and we succeed.
And he's just like, thank you so much. Like, I just wanted to come and hang out, and he's just like puts the sliver on, and he's like starting to dial it in and try to understand like what's different about it. He's just like, oh fuck, you made your own interface?
Yep. He goes, what's the name of the interface that he made?
Let's call it Glimpse.
Glimpse. He goes, yeah, call it Glimpse. The eyes is a one.
And he's just like, he's like so hyped. He's like going through. He's like, you did this so much better. And he's just like geeking out over it. And he's just like, no, I mean, like, oh my God. He's just like geeking out over it, like he just got a PlayStation. He has no idea what to do with it. He's like flipping through things and like moving through. He's like, does this have, wait, can you find me? Can like geolocation? Like, do you know where I'm at?
And he taps a button on the side of his glasses, and the Chopdeck starts to ping. And like as Nux is like scrolling through it, he like swipes left on accident and like sees that the Chopdeck automatically connects to every single signal inside of the apartment building that they're on, just automatically.
Oh wow! And he's just like, fuck. And Lifter should have put this on every one of us.
He goes, well, this took me like weeks to make.
And then he's like, God, Savant, God, I owe you, man. What do you need? What do you want? And he's like looking around. He's like, I don't know. Like, I'm a kid, but like, yeah, man. Like, he's like, this is like the grandest gift he's probably ever received.
Other than the armor that Alexa gave him.
No, that's true too, because he actually didn't know what the armor was until it saved his fucking life.
Right. Which is probably eventually going to happen with this thing too. Like, I don't know how or when, but probably. Because it is sort of a magic item, like like the armor is.
So now he's got one. He hides the bangle from his parents, but it's like he's like got one magic on his left wrist, and like space magic on his left wrist, tech magic on his right wrist.
So stick it in your gear or whatever. It's called a Chopdex, DEX,
cool.
CHOPDEX, and it's a +2 to Comtech rolls.
Oh damn! Just having that around, wow.
Just having it.
Dude, I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome, bud.
Hang on.
It's Savant, man.
So I guess that's okay. I guess I put it in because I have ship. That's where items used to be, right? It was in ship.
Hold on. Let me pull your thing up. Okay, I see that you're in the ship page.
Yeah, so I wasn't didn't this used to say items or
no, the gear down in the bottom.
Oh, gear. Okay. All right, and so you call it Chopdex with an E.
Yep, you've got it. There you go.
And then we're just gonna I'll just write +2.
Oh, I think I put it in there already. Look.
To Comtech.
It's in there already.
Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, cool, man. You put it in there, and I'm glad I didn't read that.
I completely forgot that I put it in. So yeah, now just whenever you do Comtech, put a +2 in there. Epic. And if there's that will stack with any talents that are Comtech affected.
All right, hell yeah.
So Nux should be leveling up.
It's cool too that he comes back to the colony that gave him Comtech in the first place, and it's like paying dividends.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, Savant's epic.
So after that, after that, and the Savant and Nux pretty much just like take a seat in the living room and kind of geek out over technology and like what are some of the things that Nux finds on the Chopdex that Savant put there, and I'll give you one of the examples is that he presses this sort of like little swirly knob on the side, and Nux watches as this like nearly invisible but like red sheened like projection scanner appears, and it scans the wall next to his fucking couch, and like within like 20 seconds all of a sudden like you can see the heat of the two people sitting on the other side of the wall on their couch.
Drew, I'm not even fucking kidding. Before you even said this, I was going to ask if I could get heat signatures. I'm not even joking, dude. Like, I was literally going to ask if it could see heat signature, and you're just like, and by the way, the thing that it shows up is the exact thing you were thinking about. I'm not even fucking
That's the magic of the game.
I was literally going to ask for heat signature, which is weird because, like, of all the things I could be asking for,
of all the things I could have given you and started with.
Epic. All right, finish it. Sorry.
No, I mean that's it. Like,
yeah. All right.
What does Nux do? What does Nux do when he sees that?
Yeah. So when Nux is like sitting there, he gets a little misty when he sees this because he's like, God, this would save me so many headaches, and he's just like thinking out loud about how he's like, dude, on the thing with Pusher, like we were walking with this like, intel, but you don't know how many people are in there. He's just like babbling like a mile a minute. He's just like, but if I had this, we would have known who was behind the corner. Like we would have known exactly where they were. I got in that room. I had no idea where they, and he's just like babbling and just like the geekiness. He's like pointing it at things. He like sees Juvia over in the next corner. He like sees the people who might be walking around outside, and he's just like, God, Savant, I think you just made me a superhero.
And he's just like nodding and smiling, like chill, like Snoop Dogg the whole fucking time, and like definitely like he's puffing on a fucking pipe the whole fucking time as Nux is like talking. And
yeah, he probably appreciates it's like someone's interested in what he's doing, right? Because like Juvia doesn't really like fuck with that shit, right?
She does, but it's just like she appreciates that it exists. She doesn't appreciate the work that it takes.
Yeah.
You know?
So yeah.
And
okay.
So like, I mean, she does appreciate the work that it takes. You know what I'm saying? But like, she's
just on the details. She's on the
exactly,
weeds. Yeah.
Exactly.
So like, you know, she'll be like, hey, yeah, like figure that shit out, you know, like
right.
that kind of thing. So
and so eventually she brings out the pancakes, and they're fucking incredible. They've got blueberries and chocolate chips in them. They're not organic. They are definitely like created products, as is the pancake batter and everything else. It tastes a little bit styrofoamy, but Nux knows that that's not Juvia's fault. That's just kind of how all of the private food here tastes, because that's the way it is. And on everyone's plate, along with the pancakes, are glorp bacon strips.
Yeah, so Nux is just like kind of like chowing down. He's feeling like this like energy that feels like super familial, and it just feels good to him. He's like reveling in it for a while because it's like the first time he's felt warm, safe, and protected in a way that is like he has comrades at every corner, and he's kind of like marinating it as he eats, and like he's like watching them banter with each other, and he's just kind of like thinking to himself that he's like really glad he came back.
Yeah. And they both seem to enjoy him. I mean, like, there are jokes that are shared, and they still are very both avoidant.
They don't talk about their past.
Right. Yeah. Avoidant isn't the right word. They just don't bring up anything related to their past.
Yeah, okay.
The friendship that Nux shares with them is very much a what's happening right now type of friendship.
Yeah, so maybe Nux like he kind of has like some like I guess I'll call it like water cooler talk, and like as they're eating, and you know they do some bantering back and forth, and he asks about the Orpheus. He's just like, so like, have you guys ever seen that shit before?
And Juvia's like, that thing scares the shit out of me, honestly. I mean, did you see all that black fume coming out of the back of it when it came in? Ugh. Smelled so bad for days afterwards. And Savant's like, nah, kid, I've never really been the religious type. You know, I think God and all that is complete bullshit, personally. So, I mean, from what I know, there's some kind of fucking hooligan gang that goes around fucking shit up. I don't know much else about it.
Yeah, and then Nux kind of like chuckles. He's just like, well, you don't have to worry about God with the Order of the Void. And he eats a pancake.
Why are you so worried about it?
Okay, perfect. That's a perfect segue. He's like, yeah, I guess I had a really hard conversation with a friend recently. And yeah, I mean, that's part of the orphanage I grew up in. The Hasteners are one of the sects of the Order of the Divine Void.
And Juvia's like, you grew up in an orphanage?
He just chuckles. He's like, I don't look like an orphan to you?
Well, I don't know what an orphan looks like. You just look like a Nux to me. And
then he comically lifts his fist in the air and then like points downward at himself. He's like, yeah, that's an orphan. My parents left Colony long time ago. My uncle put me there, but yeah, I look up to him more than I do my parents, really. And then he's like thinking about the bangle that they left him, and he's just like quietly thinking about that.
And Juvia's like, I'm sorry to hear that. And Savant's like, and you said this orphanage is part of this ship. Do you think they're here for the orphanage? Oh yeah, and then Nux just kind of looks at him like he's actually gotten a little. He got serious pretty much immediately after he said that. He's like, I think that they're here for, and he just kind of like hangs his head because as much as they don't like talking about the past, he never really told them what he's been up to either. And he goes, I think they're here for someone. I think I got arrested
and he's just kind of like hanging his head because he's like realizing he's never spoken that aloud.
Huvia, the caregiver that she is, like doesn't say anything, but just reaches out like a big hand and like sort of pats Nux on the back, and she's like, "It's all right, it's all right." And Savant goes, "Well, what's the story behind that?"
Yeah, and Nux kind of morosely, because his perception of the events has changed significantly, knowing the ramifications of it, right? So what he's going through right now is, initially he thought he was protecting his family, and what he realized is at this point, due to the morality play that Ramsey, because one thing that like keeps coming back up to him in the how far in the time period do you think this is? Are we like a couple months in, a month in?
So it's been 3 months since the last session, and it was
no.
months.
I mean since the Orpheus arrived.
Oh, since the Orpheus arrived, I'll leave it up to you. I'll leave it up to you.
All right, I guess let me finish the story and then we'll find out a way to place it. Because I don't know if this happens early in their hangs or later. Okay, so the morality of dealing with Ramsey's inflexibility really surprised him, because he thought he was coming home and gaining a friend, but what he realized is he actually gained an adversary. So working through the emotions of what it meant for Ramsey to be completely unyielding and saying, it's not right to kill someone, right? Like just tell me you know that. And so he's been wrestling with that. So as he's telling the story, all I'm saying is that it's tinged with a different perspective than it would have been the first time it happened. Let's say he went to Savant and Huvia before he ran into Ramsey, it probably wouldn't be told this way. Okay, so he goes into the story and he goes, so I go back to my orphanage and I meet up with someone that's, I've trusted her since as far back as I can remember. This kid, I never got along with him, man. He comes in and I find out he's extorting the Order of the Divine Void. He's asking her for some fucking payment. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I shot him in the back and I took him out. I don't think I knew what I was doing in that moment, but I'm not going to lie. I thought I was going to, all right, let's just say I took him a long way away from the colony and I didn't expect him to come back. Let's just say what I thought I was doing didn't happen. He's coming for me now. He just kind of like, he like puts a fork in the pancake, realizing that he's like completely done eating. He's lost his appetite. And they came for Keeper Seif, and he like hangs. And it's my fault. It's my fault.
Huvia goes, "Well, we do what we have to do to protect the people we love." And Savant goes, "Let me get this straight. You shot the kid in the back, but he's still alive? What's the problem? Why are you feeling so guilty? It sounds like he got off lightly."
Yeah, and then like
these are criminals, so they're like, fuck
yeah, they're like, that's fine. He made it. That's fine. He's like, did I not mention that they're like members of the Galapol? He just like chuckles nervously.
No, Huvia and Savant both start laughing, and Savant's like, wait, is it one of those little teenage kids like fucking running around on their little space bikes dressed up all like little tiny cops?
Yeah, and then like Nux like chuckles, like he can hear the humor in it. He's like, yeah, so the gun I shot him with was his own and it didn't have ammo in it.
And like Huvia goes, you have no idea. We've been making fun of them like as an inside joke for the last like 6 months. We gave them all names. Like
that's awesome.
You know those kids?
He's like, yeah.
They look like such douchebags.
He's like, you're not wrong. And he just like kind of chuckles nervously.
The one with the stick up his ass is Herman. Yeah, so Dell is Herman.
The one with the eye. Oh, so that's Ramsey? Yeah. Let's see.
Cotton Eye joke.
Yeah, just call him Cotton Eye. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Cotton Eye, yeah.
So we've got Herman, Cotton Eye. And after they go through all of the names, Savant's like, which one did you shoot?
He's like, yeah, I went after Herman. We haven't gotten along since way back.
And Huvia spits out her drink and she goes, wait. His name's actually Herman?
And he's just like, no, it's not Herman Huvia.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny because like as Nux, like here's the perception. Oh, Gallipol Jr., is that what they're called?
Yeah, and that's just like what they call themselves.
Oh, okay. So like when he hears about like the way that they talk about it, he actually kind of feels like this like a sense of like warmth, because he's just like, yeah, maybe I'm taking this way too seriously, but he knows in his heart of hearts that what he's doing is in avoiding detection is actually very important. So yeah, he's hearing them out. He's just like, yeah. So I think the Hasteners might be here for her. She was or is a Hastener.
This keeper thief lady.
Yeah. And I feel like I was going to try and get her out, but I don't think it's going to be possible.
Maybe they'll get her out. Who's to say?
Yeah, no one knows what they're doing right now. I think Nux would definitely want to train to understand what other capabilities the sliver has. And yeah, in my opinion, I think we've probably covered off on everything that I would have wanted to. The things that he was going to look into with the sliver is quote unquote like backwards compatibility. Can I communicate with other comm systems? Can I communicate with Lifter as I'm moving through the colony doing his various tasks, like that kind of thing?
It does function as a communications device, yes.
All right, perfect. And then outside of that, I think I basically just start getting into like a meme-like relationship with Savant and Huvia. And he like, like as he's going through the colony, one of the ways that he keeps himself grounded is by, because, everywhere he goes, he's basically incognito, and it's pretty much always a high stress situation where he has to be on the lookout. I actually just heard this crazy podcast story about this guy who like took someone else's identity like 40 years ago. And then at the end of his life, when he had like a cancer diagnosis, he killed himself, but no one knows what he was running from. Like that to me is like, that guy was living his entire life on the fringes, and that's very high stress, right? So I'm kind of thinking about it that way, and so the points of levity and the points of like warmth that he gets in his day is like memeing with Huvia and Savant.
Yeah, that's cool. So at some point, I mean, like throughout the whole like 90 days, like Nux runs into Pusher pretty much any time that he goes to visit Lifter at the scrap bank, and the last time that Nux was there, Pusher on his way out was like, hey, hit me up sometime. So one like sort of like random evening, feeling slightly lonely while he hangs out in his uncle's apartment or uncle's hiding space, Nux definitely reached out to speak with Pusher, and because Nux is trying to stay incognito, the pair decided instead of going out and having any kind of like direct dinner or whatever, that Pusher would just invite Nux over to his apartment. And Nux had been to Pusher's apartment once or twice, simply delivering things to him from Lifter years before. And it's the exact same as it was last time. It's very it's very simple. There are a lot of potted plants running along one wall. Like he has a whole potted plant collection that he like very diligently takes care of. There's like a singular couch, a singular end table. There is a Hexanet caster for him to like watch his television, and then there's a little like delivery pod slide on the wall where he basically can get Infinite Flavors corporate fast food just delivered directly to his apartment, meaning that he never ever cooks for himself. And this is the life that he lives. And at some point, Nux makes his way over here to hang out with Pusher. And how would you like to see this play out?
Pusher enters the apartment, and he's probably like telling a rambling story, and the Nux is just like, wait. And then he like stops Pusher, and he like walks through the apartment. He's just like, This is the same place you had before I left. You haven't changed anything.
He's like, why would I need to change anything, kid?
And he's just like, who takes care of these plants? You don't even take care of yourself.
He's like, I take care of the plants. This is Davey, and that's Rosalita, and that's George, and that's Steven. And he's like, just lists off like 15 different, like, these are my babies.
And Nux is just like, God, I haven't never seen so much green in one place. I'm impressed, man. I'm impressed. And he just like walks over, but he's like delicate. He's like, what? Where did you get this one? Isn't this illegal on Colony? It's like one of those things you're not supposed to bring back because it's like super invasive.
I spray it with pesticides once a week. Keeps them from growing. Don't tell anybody it's here.
He's like, Pusher, I would never tell anyone about this. He's just like so impressed.
It's a cucuvine.
A cucuvine. There you go. So he like looks at the cucuvine and then he like realizes that it's like, he's like looking out at the colony behind it. And he just like fixates on the Orpheus. And he's just like, yeah, so that ship, huh?
So Lifter walks over to this tiny mini fridge that's like sort of sitting over in the corner and opens it and pulls out 2 different like mister bottles. And like after he closes the little mini fridge up, he walks over to the wall of plants and starts like misting all of his little different plants. And he goes, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like weirdos. Sorry, kid, just kind of weirdos in my opinion. I don't know what they're doing here. I mean, it seems like we'll say that at this point they've already started. This is pretty far into.
They start building, yeah.
Yeah, this is pretty far into the thing. This is like maybe like a week before the rest of the night. Once we get further in, he'll be like, I mean, they've been here for 3 months. They weren't doing any problems. I don't know why they're building. Like maybe they're planning on like building another orphanage or a school or something. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and Nux kind of like hears him talk, and he realizes the extent of the kind of conversation that he can have with Lifter about stuff, and he kind of like he moves it back to like greener pastures, and they start. Oh, you know what? What in a way I think Pusher is the one person that Nux would have started confiding in some of his like violent encounters, and he starts asking Pusher, like he changes it back to stuff Pusher's confident in, like strong arming shit, doing missions, et cetera, and maybe he starts asking Pusher, he's like, you've been off colony a little, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
You ever run into shit where stuff pops out of people? And like Nux isn't even sure how to talk about this because he's never done it before.
He goes, what you talking about?
And then Nux kind of like ponders how to put it. He like puts his hand to his chin. He's like, have you ever come across, I don't know, like a life form? Have you ever seen a creature come out of a man before?
Well, first off, that sounds horrifying. And secondly, no. I mean, I've seen gross things on the Hexanet, parasites that are invasive and, things like that in nature. But personally, have I experienced it? No.
And yeah, maybe that's interesting to Nux. And he's just like, oh, I'd love to see what you saw. Maybe I can kind of understand better what the shit I saw.
And he's like, all right. And he like goes and sits down like on his couch and he pulls up the Hexanet and like types in invasive species parasite. And like Nux starts to like see there's like on the Hexanet, picture it like this. The Hexanet is like 2 screens that pop up once. There's like the Earth internet and then there's like the galactic internet. So the Earth and the galactic internet are separate. So like he walks Nux through all of these different videos and like they watch a documentary about how there are different funguses that can essentially like there are different funguses that can essentially like invade into insects' brains and like turn them into like walking
cordyceps. Yeah.
Ophiocordyceps unilateralis.
Mm-hmm.
So they like walk through that. And he also that never, like the Ambrose stuff never shows up. But then like another one that he shows Nux, Cymothoa exigua, or the tongue-eating louse, is a parasitic isopod.
Yeah, we were talking about it before.
And it basically will go into the mouth of a fish, and it eats their tongue, and then replaces their tongue. And so everything that the fish eats, the parasite gets a piece of. And so Nux is seeing all of these like absolute like nightmares of nature that are just completely fucking normal. But in regards to what he personally experienced, nothing comes even close to the true nightmare.
Yeah, so as he's like going through it, he's like just as fascinated as Pusher is. I bet you Pusher's like showing him stuff like, oh yeah, look at this one.
It's so like, gross.
And then like Nux kind of like sits back and he's like taking it all in, and he just kind of has this like, you know, larger realization. He's just like, yeah, the universe is a pretty fucked up place, huh?
He goes, it was before we got here, and it will be long after.
And then yeah, he just kind of like looks at Pusher. He's like, you're probably right. And yeah, I think that's probably a good place to end the scene.
And he's like, I mean, eventually all stars explode. So, I mean, every planet that's ever existed is eventually going to get destroyed. I guess that's kind of what those Hasters are talking about.
And yeah, like he kind of like Nux kind of like looks out the window at the big looming Orpheus, and he's just like, yeah, you're not wrong, are you?
And he goes, I did see that on some kind of science thing once. It was pretty pictures. He goes, but I don't like to really think about that so much. Just thinking about how tiny each world is. And I mean, even the hexagalaxies, we've covered hundreds of millions of miles of space, colonized so much, but God, who knows how much, you know, who knows how much is left out there we haven't seen. I was born here, and Lifter's my best friend, and I got nobody pretty much left but them. So, I mean, you stick to what you know, kid. Well, I stick to what I know, kid. You know, it takes very little to keep me happy. I wake up, I work out, I hit the gym, I get my boxing in, I go have breakfast with Lifter, and I spend the rest of my day hanging out with my best friend.
Breakfast, wow, that's great. It sounds so cool. And like Nux is like kind of impressed. He's like, oh, you should take me boxing sometime. And like, so he's like trying to gain everything he can from the new friends that he's making.
When Lifter says that, or when Nux says that, Pusher's eyes like light the fuck up, and he's like, oh yeah, you want to go?
Yeah, and Nux is just like, you know, I spent too much time sneaking. I should probably be able to put some muscle behind some of these bones. And he just like squeezes his own fleshy arm.
And okay, so then he's like, you know what? Hoovia was just asking me about it a couple days ago. I haven't had a chance to bring her around to the gym yet, but like, you guys get along, right?
Yeah, and Nux like already is flushed. He's like blushing a little bit. He's just like, yeah, I think we're okay.
And so we'll say that, like, you know, over the course of these, 90 days, we'll say that conversation happened earlier. Like, we'll say over the course of these 90 days, like, Nux was definitely in. Pusher owns a gym. Like, he has this. Oh, wow. Yeah, so his little apartment is above a gym, we've now decided. And so he owns a gym, but, like, he's, like, silent partner. So he's got access to this thing all the time. So, like, Nux and Pusher and Hoovia have these like late night sparring sessions. And go ahead and just roll a close combat for me.
Okay, not mobility?
Not mobility.
Okay. There it is, yep. Okay.
All right, so let's say that you want to push it?
Yeah, I mean, it's safe to push in this scenario. It's not like a... Yeah, stress. Yeah, of course he'd be stressed. He's learning a new thing.
Yeah. Let's say you go up one close combat over 3 months of boxing training with Hoovia and Pusher. Nux puts on a little bit of muscle. He gets a little bit quicker, a little bit tougher. Adds one close combat.
Ooh, I love it. That's exactly what I love that. I love story-based progress. We just did a montage. Yeah, so like you could just imagine the beginning, like, so he's really good at stealth, right? But he's not good at like putting muscle behind that. So he gets like dropped a few times, and then Hoovia is like, Nux, you'll get it eventually. And she's like throwing like her lightning fast fists, and even she like Pusher's even like, oh shit, she's not
like the first time that Nux gets in the ring with her, he's just like throwing just like mad punches into her body, and like she takes it. She just takes all of them, like takes them all, like, and they all kind of chuckle. And like he definitely gets his ass kicked a couple times for sure. Like before he starts starting to anticipate movements and start blocking movements, and like he's just getting a little bit better. And you know what? With that second What's your mobility right now?
It is 3.
And so we'll say that along with so you have a 5 close combat, and we'll say along with the, boxing training that has gone on for the last 3 months, we'll bump your mobility up 1 as well.
Oh, damn. This is what I'm talking about. This is like exactly what I would hope for Nux's. Like he's always about like figuring his own shit out. And so, yeah, Savant, and then this is phenomenal. I love it. Thank you.
So I guess sort of after all that, how would he walk through in the last week as all of these buildings have been being put up around by the Hasteners? It's definitely late at night. It's probably like 1 o'clock in the morning when he does this. With already 4 of the temporary shelters built up in the streets around the orphanage, Nux makes his way quietly at 1 o'clock in the morning through the shadowed, dark, nearly rusted out streets around the orphanage. Roll a mobility for me. Actually, first roll an observation for me, then roll a mobility for me. Essentially, like, Nux walks roughly about like 11 feet down a dark, dingy, like poorly lit alleyway towards the mouth and entrance. And when he gets there, he leans up against a wall and looks out and sees that across the street is the walled compound of the orphanage. And like behind the orphanage is the great walls around the city that protect it from the outlands. And he sees that there are already 4 temporary metal shelter buildings that have been built up, and that then further, now this is where you roll your observation.
Okay, yeah, I think he would be wary of sneak attack in this situation, so I'm giving myself that bonus. Okay, so the Hasteners are they're all inside, but there are some walking around, but not like
some of them are walking around outside, moving between the buildings, the temporary buildings, but most of them, because Nux knows that it was groups of 18, and there's 4 buildings, so there's like 72 people, and like there's 4 buildings, and he can only see maybe like 16 of them sort of like moving around in the streets, doing different things, going between buildings and stuff. And you can hear sounds coming from inside. It sounds like they're using power tools and building other things. So yeah, that's what's kind of going on, and it's like the middle of the night.
Okay, yeah, he definitely takes in. He spent some time. Maybe he's cased the joint for a little while. So
he does see a patrol, a full-on 12-person gallop pole military patrol, walk by. And as he
they're
does
on like they're on like the outer limits.
They're on the outer limits. They're keeping to themselves. And they walk by, and like as they do so, they kind of slow down and they keep an eye on everything that's happening. And like one of them like does like a little. They're all recording. All of their suits are recording, and then they continue on furthering around. So Nux is able to stay hidden within the shadows, but that would definitely be his mobility that he succeeded. So you're gonna need to roll another mobility to actually get into the fucking place.
Okay, cool. All right, yeah. So maybe Nux has spent some time understanding what the patterns are of the security outside, as well as the monks, and he feels like he's finally got the right opportunity to move in after casing a joint for a while. So he's going to first he waits for the main military garrison to pass by, and he's just like, he thinks to himself, it's weird that they stay so bunched up, but it's not what I would do. And he's like starting to realize, like, if I really didn't want anyone to, it's not about someone getting in. He realizes it's about, they're worried about what people might do to get out. They're not sure what the monks are going to do. So he kind of uses that to his advantage. And once the big group passes, he makes his way through one of the alleys, like, because you say they're building 4 buildings, but are there like alleys between them?
It's just straight up in the middle of the street. Like they're bungalows.
Oh, okay. So they're basically just like, it kind of feels like military bunkers, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So Nux just kind of like takes a wide berth. He like takes some old paths that he knew about that he's sure the Hasteners don't even know about, and he makes his way to a hidden entrance, probably the one that he would have used before when he went to go check on the boys, but he didn't want to seem sketchy, so he took the main way and tapped that window. Oh, pushing that. Fuck you, dude. Like, why did I even get this if I can't even?
It's a stressful situation.
All right.
What is the like secret hidden entrance in through the wall that Nux typically would use to get in and out into the
Yeah. I think he mostly learned about how it goes out. But okay, so he goes to the back exit. I mean, he goes to the back side of the orphanage, and he looks for this old opening that he used to use, and it's really just it's a actually we could play with this with his new muscle gain. He takes a look at this vent that they used to just like slide trash through, and he's just like, it looks like it's still good. And he's like quietly like goes up to it, and then he like looks at the vent, and then he like looks at himself. He's like, oh, I'm fucking too big. Am I too big? And then he just like kind of like squeezes into the vent and like starts shimmying his way up.
Yeah, with the inches that he's grown over the last couple of years and the mass that he's put on, especially in the last couple of months training, like it's definitely a tight fit. But he definitely finds himself coming into the laundry room pretty quickly. The vent slides across, and he crawls in behind a laundry machine that is like loose wheeled on the bottom and easily moved. And like Nux has used this vent many times before.
Yeah, so Nux kind of like pops himself into the room, and he's just like dusting himself off, like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that much longer. He just says to himself in his head. He doesn't speak out loud. At this point, I think he's turned off his face. Yeah, okay. He's turned off the face, and he tries to make himself look as non-imposing as possible. No, he keeps the face on. Why would he do that? He wouldn't do that yet. He hasn't reach his target. You said it's 1 a.m.?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he keeps it off, and then what he kind of does is he leans into it not having a face, but he leans into it being dark. Okay. And so he turns off the lights in the laundry room. He like peers around, and he rolls observation to see what he can see. Okay, so after he turns off the light and he looks around, he doesn't. I guess let me know. What does he see?
So when Nux turns the light off to the laundry room and opens the door and walks like roughly about 20 yards down the hallway, sort of out towards the center foyer, it's dark and it's quiet, and he doesn't particularly see any lights coming from any of the other hallways that would lead towards the offices, the library, or the classrooms, or the orphans' bedrooms, or any of that kind of stuff. Okay. Now, so I'm gonna edit this part out, but like fucking between you and me, Neo is in her office.
Yeah, so I mean, his goal is eventually to get to Neo's office. What I would like to roll observation on now is whether or not he can see any hastener influence inside the orphanage.
Okay.
Cool.
As Nux leaves the alleyway that leads to the laundry room and further makes his way out into the large grand central foyer of the orphanage, he sees that around the black tile mosaic of the black hole on the center of the floor, there is like runic designs that have been like laid out in small piles of black sand, and they're nothing that Nux recognizes.
There are piles of sand around the mosaic?
Like 20 of them in the circle around the black. Like small, like maybe 5-inch, just little sand art.
Okay. And with my second success, can I tell whether or not this place is being observed?
In what sense?
Like, does it seem like the hasteners like have some level of security installed? Are they watching what's happening? Are they focused on what's happening in the orphanage, or is most of their intent just happening on what's going on outside? I just kind of want to see how much influence they've had. And so is that it? Is that like that's the sand?
That's all that you can really see from where you are. There's no hasteners that you see. It's quiet, you know?
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm at that threshold, which means Keeper and Yo's office is basically right there, right?
Yeah, you're just going to walk down another hallway.
Okay, so I'm going to... Do I need to roll mobility to do that, or can I tell that it's safe? Okay, no. So upon Nux, upon seeing the 20 piles of sand, his forehead wrinkles a little bit. He's not quite sure what he's seeing. He goes up to one of the piles of sand, and he tries to see if he can tell where it came from. Maybe with the sliver. Maybe there's an
Yeah. Roll a comtech.
Already coming in handy, Savant.
So it's not like the chop dex scans the biological material, or scans the material of the sand, but what it does is it scans it and takes a picture and like checks it on the hexanet, and then all of a sudden like 3 different pictures of black sanded beaches appear. One of them on the world of Olympus Vaughn, one of them on the world of Alumestra, and one of them on the world of Dauphine.
Yeah, and Nux just taking this in, he like jots a note in the sliver to not lose this search, and like he looses the pile. He looses the little bit of sand he was rubbing through his fingers, and just like walks confidently towards Neo's office door.
Okay. And when he gets to Neo's office door, it is closed.
Okay, so he crouches down in the corner. He opens his sliver and he does the heat detection.
Okay, roll your comtech. He sees when the projection shows up and scans the doorway that there's one heat signature, and it's laying down on one of the 2 couches in the center of the room.
Okay, Nux feeling pretty confident that is Keeper Neo. He moves to open the door as silently as possible. All right, here, watch this be 0. Fucking game. Okay, thank God.
Oh yeah, very successfully. The door opens with ease. It makes no sound, and Nux basically makes it all the way right up to where Keeper Neo is sleeping on the couch. She doesn't hear him come in at all.
And is there a seat across from her, like that I can sit down in?
There is. It's like two love seats, sort of like across from each other, and there's an end table between the 2.
Okay, so Nux kind of looks around the room and makes sure that it's secure, and then he like sits in the seat, and he quietly whispers, "Keeper Neo."
A couple seconds after he says her name, she kind of like stirs and like opens one eye and like sees that Nux is sitting over there, and like through the squint she goes, "Did you break into the orphanage?"
And Nux just kind of like smiles, and he says, "I don't think I ever really left."
Well, I'm glad to see you're all right. It's been a couple of months. And like she kind of like stirs and sits up, and she goes, "What do I owe this pleasure?" Yeah,
and Nux kind of like, because their last conversation was pretty grave, and he kind of left it on a note like, "You won't ever have to see me again." So he's leaning into that, and he like looks down, and he looks up, and so Nux, knowing that she's enduring, he starts to he goes, I've been reflecting on the time I spent in your care, and I think I'm realizing that I wasn't as kind to you as I should have been. I promised you that you wouldn't see me again. I'm sorry that we're meeting under these circumstances, but I'm really worried about Keeper Sif. I'm really worried about the Orpheus. And he just kind of like motions to the sky, knowing that, she knows exactly what he's talking about. And I want to make sure the orphanage is okay. I want to make sure you're okay. I want to make sure the boys are okay. And how can I help?
And she goes, "Well, thank you for the apology. I appreciate that. You can help like I told you could help last time. We will take any and all donations. I will say that the Hasteners have been surprisingly genteel. The most interaction that they have had has been with the children, but I can say that their arrival here is quite concerning. The fact that you brought up Keeper Sif, her son is one of the void wraiths on the Orpheus.
Oh, shit.
And
okay.
Voltaire is quite extreme thinking. I'm very surprised at how calm things have been since they arrived.
And Nux, like the hair on the backs of his head is just like prickling. And he kind of asks like a benign but like seeking question and goes, have you been on a world with the Hasteners before?
She goes, I've been on many worlds with many Hasteners, but the Void Guard and the Wraiths are a different breed. I have never personally interacted with any of them other than her son, and he is not an ideal conversationalist.
Was he an orphan here? How do you know him?
He was a very special child. Keeper Sif took quite an interest in him. He believed that he spoke to the darkness of space itself. And his ideas, as he got older, were exceedingly more and more violent. He had to leave the orphanage, and he's been with the Orpheus ever since.
Keeper, do you have time to sit with me this evening? I know I disturbed your slumber.
And she gets up. She goes, well, I'm already up, and you're here, so we might as well. And she, before getting up off of the couch, Keeper Neo does the sign of the void.
Oh, I said Sif. Yeah, I meant Neo. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Keeper Neo does the sign of the void to Nux before getting up off of her couch, and like sort of yawns and walks over and to a little calf machine on a table leaning up against the wall, and she goes, "Would you like some calf?"
And then Nux gladly accepts.
And she brews 2 little cups and brings over and like hands one little like espresso cup to Nux in like a little black teacup, and she's got one as well. And she goes, "So what is it exactly that you're here for in the middle of the night, disturbing my slumber?"
Yeah, so Nux levels with her, and yeah, I think I'll be economical with this. He levels with her and kind of says that he's worried that it's the result of his actions that brought the Hasteners here. He's worried about Keeper Sif. Yeah, maybe as he's like taking a sip of the calf, he looks up and he's just like, "I know you said you haven't been in touch with Keeper Sif. I know you weren't necessarily on good terms, but I think the Hasteners arriving is probably hastened your need for information. Have you been in touch with Keeper Sif since I last saw you?"
I have not, but very soon after the Orpheus arrived, a squadron of PMAC soldiers arrived, and we were all questioned very thoroughly on why the ship was here, how many people were on the ship, and they weren't very pleased with our lack of answers. I tried to explain to them the difference in our religion, but it's complicated for some people. I asked then about Keeper Sif and if there was any way I could speak with her, but they refused an audience. I do hope she's all right.
Nux asks, so Voltaire, if he was he here when I was here?
He was gone long before we ever saw you.
And then he just kind of follows up. How do we know he's a void wraith?
The last time I saw him, we would have been, I don't know, 9 or 10. It was the last time the Orpheus was here. There were terrible night. There was a discussion that Keeper Sif had with one of the keepers. He was no longer here. I believe that you remember Keeper Black. She was a good woman, but too spirited, and in her cups she could become disagreeable. And there were heretical words thrown about and statements made about Keeper Sif and the Hasteners in general, and specifically the Hastener's Fist. Derogatory statements about Voltaire and his visions, and violence arose. And Keeper Sif, or less than a month later, the Orpheus arrived, and by the next morning, Keeper Black was never seen again. I saw Voltaire once. I hope to never see him again. That is how I know he is a void wraith.
Yeah, so it sounds like there was kind of like a... Wait, so was Keeper Black a Hastener?
No, Keeper Black was in... what's the third one? What's the one that they don't fucking, like, accept?
Yeah, no one talks about. It's the Unhurried.
Yeah, so, no, Keeper Black was an Enduring who revealed herself that night to believe... she was an Enduring... Keeper Black.
Unhurried.
Yeah, Keeper Black was an Enduring who revealed herself that night to believe the tenets of the Unhurried. And, well, personally, I don't believe the Unhurried, and Keeper Seif very much does not believe the Unhurried. It was a terrible night. I wish it had not happened.
Yeah, so Nux is actually gaining empathy for Keeper Nyo to basically start understanding her perspective as a human existing within the order of the Divine Void. And he finds himself just like softening his stance on her, like almost like word by word. Are they applying their Hastener ideology to the orphanage?
Well, there has been no interest in occupying the orphanage. They have done plenty of tours. I don't know if it's been the same group or multiple groups. They all wear those black cloaks. I haven't seen any of their faces, but they do so love the children, and the children play outside, and some of the monks play along with them, and the monks have taught some of the children. I don't know exactly what those runes are, but if you saw the sand outside the mosaic, it's some kind of language, I believe, that they use. I haven't heard any of them speak.
Yeah, and like Nux is like pretty troubled by that, because that means that they exist in a space where they can communicate at a level that he doesn't yet understand. He doesn't quite know what he's concerned about, but he like feels this like uncanny feeling, and he kind of just asks Keeper and Yo, just like generally, should we be worried?
Well, I believe that not worrying would be foolish. I would lie if I haven't laid awake here at night sometimes worrying that Voltaire might show up in a surprise and accuse me of ousting his mother, but I have not seen or heard of him yet, so hopefully not. She is not here. She is at the garrison, so if he has any fury, I keep my fingers crossed that he directs it towards them.
Yeah, and so upon hearing that, he just feels so fucking shitty, because he knows that he's like starting to connect the dots between the ramifications of an impulsive moment and what it ultimately ended up in just like tearing at the walls of something that he only recently came to understand that he cherished so much. So he's like taking a look at Keeper Nyo, and he's like thinking about the ramifications of his actions. And he goes, Keeper, since coming back to the colony, I have reconnected with, I'll call it the pulse. I reconnected with the pulse of the colony. And I would say, if you were ever in need, I want to make sure that you were able to reach me. I'm not sure what I can do in a given moment, but I have help. And he just kind of like looks, and he's just like, he kind of like looks at the floor, and he's like, I have help. And the number one thing that is a priority for me right now is making sure my family is safe. And that includes you. And that includes my friends. So if Voltaire does come knocking, I urge you to point him away from the orphanage. And if you feel that it is a must, point him to me.
She goes, my dear, I know that you're brave, and I know that you've survived the face of death. But I told you last time, you seek danger, and there are some dangers that you should not run towards. Voltaire is one of those. I protect all of my children. I will not send him looking for you. If Voltaire comes here and has a problem, I will handle it. Do not get into another situation like you did with Keeper Sif. You are still a child, Nikolai.
And upon hearing his birth name, he kind of like shudders a little bit. He's just like, he's like thinking to himself, he's like, yeah, I fucking am. And then he kind of like looks at Keeper Nyo, and he's like wondering how far she's been. And he's trying to like see into her eyes, like what her experience is, wondering if she's seen what he's seen. But her fear or her presentation of the threat in Voltaire like stills him a little bit. And he's like watching her, and he's not blinking. I feel like she's probably not blinking. And he kind of like looks at the floor again, because it's his childish way of like handling the inability to process. And he goes, I understand.
I truly hope that you do. The boys are okay. I've been checking in on them weekly. They're handling their studies. Edward, the oldest, isn't tending to the beliefs as much as the younger boys. He's very anti-religion in general. I believe that comes from the Utah upbringing. But Eric and Eli seem to enjoy the stories, at least, and Eli's got quite a memory. They've asked me about you each time, and how you're doing. I've told them that you're still here on the colony and that you've been helping out when you can.
And then he's like so appreciative. He's like glad that they're growing. And he goes, Keeper Nyo, considering where we started and where we are now, you've given me much more than I could have ever hoped for. I thank you.
And she goes, well, you're very welcome. Now, to the matter at hand, or to the other matter, the other boys, Dell and Ramsey, have stepped up their surveillance of this area. I'm quite surprised you were able to get inside. Now, granted, it is late at night, and the distraction of the hasteners is, I'm sure, useful to you. They are as if dogs on a hunt for you. It seems as though he has gotten more focused than he was before.
Yeah, and Nux kind of like he actually doesn't look at the ground when he sees this, and as soon as she says that, he goes, yeah, I think I've lost a friend, and I hope they haven't been putting undue pressure on you. I would say that the conflict I have between them will not go beyond them, and I don't look forward to the day that I see Ramsey again, and this time he looks away. Yeah, that's a good one. I don't look forward to the day.
And she goes, well, you know it well. Everything ends. If this friendship ended, it simply means it was never meant to. It was meant to end when it was meant to end.
And then Nux kind of like, he like nods, but he's like, it feels bad to nod, to admit this.
It doesn't mean that the time you shared together never happened. It just simply means that the energy you shared has changed.
Yeah, and Nux definitely knows that. He's thinking about all these moments where he could have committed acts of violence. He played a long game of subterfuge. He played a long game of getting his ultimate goal, but it never tasted the way he expected it to. And when he got it, he didn't like it. So he just like feels that he understands the nature of changing energy. And he goes, Keeper Nyo, you're still teaching me after all this time. I know I'm still a teenager, but damn if I don't feel like a old man.
And she looks at you and she goes, I see it on your face. Only 15, but you could pass for 20. How are you doing, by the way? How are you keeping out, and what? I don't know. Don't tell me too much, just because I don't want to endanger you just in case, but give me the blurry version.
And Nux appreciates that. He kind of goes through. He tells her loosely. He doesn't tell her any names or anything, but he tells her loosely what he's been up to in the colony and what he's been facilitating. He talks about how he feels like he knows the colony better now than he ever did when he was a kid, because he can see how it works better. And that's why the wrinkle of the Hasteners showing up is so profoundly alarming, because he feels like it's something he can't begin to understand, but also no one else has an answer either. So he kind of gives a long form of that, and that's why. And then he re-offers any help, any aid that she'll ever need. He just makes sure that she knows that she's feeling supported in some way. And maybe he talks about how he's going to try and secure a permanent donation stream to her, just in good faith.
Is there any money that he has on him then that he's willing to donate?
Yeah, I think, I just got, let's say it was just after a payday from Lifter. Let me pull up my character sheet.
I think I said that he gave Nux 5,000.
And as the payment for the original?
Yeah, on top of the address for Ramsey. Okay,
so that's I would have had
it was 8,000, because I specifically remember myself saying that's 3 up from. Oh no, it was 10,000 because he offered him 7 and then he gave him 10 and he goes, that's 3, because Nux was like,
oh yeah, that's right, yeah. So that puts me at 13,000. No, 13,000, and then but yeah, let's say he just donates everything that he's gained from Lifter since he's been working with her, and this will be far along. You said 3 months and they're still building, right?
They've only been building for the last 4 days.
Okay, so yeah, they just started, which means we're at the very tail end of this. So I would say however much money you think Lifter has given me since I arrived, he donates to Keeper and you.
We'll say like 15,000.
Oh wow, that's a lot. Keeper, I think I've come to know why my parents chose this place to raise me, because I feel there's a balance in the nature of the people of the city, the Order of the Divine Void. Just in a way, the Gallipol contribute too, but there's an enduring quality here that I think I resonate with quite well. I've done well for myself since I came back, and I want to make sure that you know that you have my enduring support, and I want to pledge this much, knowing that I couldn't give anything last time. I want you to know that you do have my full support.
When the chime goes off on the little thing in the end table between the 2 tables, and she swipes it and sees that the number is as high as it is at 15,000, her eyes go wide and she kind of coughs on the calf a little bit, and she goes, "My boy, this is a lot of money. I thank you. This is very gracious." And
Nux goes, it's not even enough to pay for the lifetime that gave me the skills that have gotten me this far. Keeping you honest, I've been hell and back, and I didn't realize what was powering me that whole time, but it's right here. It's home.
For such a donation, I must humbly offer you something in return. And she gets up off of the chair and like walks over to this fucking like beautifully ornate sort of armoire that's like made out of metal, and I mean it was Keeper Sieves, so it's got all of these like black spikes and stuff all around it, and she goes and she cracks it open, and Nux can't see what she's doing because the door is sort of like blocking her, but when she steps out, he sees that she's got this like stainless steel metal tray, and she walks back over and she sits down on the couch with Nux this time instead of across from him, and she sets the metal tray on the couch between them, and he sees that there is a archaic, roughly 300-year-old old earth tattoo gun with black ink. And she goes, "Allow me to brand you with the Divine Void's symbol."
And Nux he's like taking it all in. He's like thinking about it, and he's like looking at her, and he's like, this I don't think this honor is for me. Isn't this what all of you have?
And she goes, it's an honor held for the most involved members of our religion, and you have shown yourself to be, I don't want to say the same as Voltaire, but in a much very similar way to him, primally protective of the order. It is a respectful viewpoint, and I believe that if the Enduring were to have their own Void Guard, someone like you would be a perfect person to be involved with it.
Okay, so yeah, Nux kind of takes all that in. He feels blessed by the honor. Where do you put it?
And she hovers her hand like right over her heart.
That's exactly where it should go. And then he opens his shirt.
And for the next 45 minutes, Keeper No very deftly performs a talent and skill, something that she's been working on for years. And as the time goes on, she like rolls up the thick black sleeves that she wears, and like Nux has never seen. But like from the wrist up on both arms, she's got like thick tattoo sleeves of like.
Oh, she's like Yakuza. That's awesome.
Different beautiful designs and stuff. And the black hole design that she tattoos on Nux's chest is a like perfect circle, as if it had been like laser scanned onto him. It's not large. It's roughly like maybe 3 inches in diameter. So, you know, definitely small.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, as Nux is taking it, he's just like super shocked, because clearly she's got level upon level of skill and talent and wisdom that he just could never comprehend when he was there. And he accepts it gracefully. Maybe he chats about like, where'd you pick this up? Where'd you get those sleeves? Like that kind of thing.
And she's like, I grew up on a space station of truckers. It was something I picked up far before I joined the Order.
He's like, well, the skill has not left you, Keeper, and I am blessed for it.
And she kind of chuckles. And
he's like thinking about who he can show off the tattoo to, but he's realizing that his circle is limited because it's religious.
He does know that Juvia has tattoos.
Okay.
Yeah. She's got like a big fucking like flaming eagle on her chest and like a bunch of flowers on her shoulders and her upper arms and stuff.
Yeah, and she 100% wouldn't care if it was religious, because she's just like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, no, she would just be like, oh, sick, dude, you got one? Awesome. Like, that's literally it. So, is there anything else he wants to do at the orphanage, or?
Yeah, I think like now that he's cleared all this, he realizes that Keeper Nyo is kind of just waiting in the shadows of this too. He kind of like thinks about the construction outside. He's like, do you know what they're building?
I did venture into the first building. It's 4 separate smaller bedrooms. There's no plumbing or anything else. It just appears to be some kind of housing situation. I don't know how long they're planning on being here or how many people there are going to be, but I counted up at least 60 the other day. It's hard to get an exact number because they're all wearing the same thing.
Yeah, and then Nux kind of like thinks it down, like let's say he's like putting on his shirt now. He's just like, I think it may be helpful to both our causes to keep each other informed. I'd like to make sure that you're able to reach me if you feel so inclined, and perhaps it's best that I don't come back here to avoid detection or scrutiny.
She's like, Nux, after the donation and the dedication that you've shown to the orphanage, if there is any inkling of danger that I hear coming your way, I will let you know.
Yeah, Nux nods, and you can feel the sense that they've created a bond with each other, and he goes, Keeper, this has been a singular moment in my life. I feel like I don't have the words to describe it, but I feel like it was the right move coming back to this colony, to the order, I will try to stay out of your hair. And he just kind of like gives like a Nikolai charming smile.
Honestly, Nux, if you can get the problem you've got taken care of with Ramsey and Dell all said and done, I can find a room for you here. If it's something that you wished to do, return to us officially.
For the first time, he's feeling like an unbidden emotion, and he starts feeling a little bit misty, and he like starts making his way through the door, and he's just like, Keeper, I would love that, but I don't think it's going to happen that way.
We can all hope for happy dreams, can't we?
Only the happiest. And he does the symbol of the void and then makes his way out of the office.
For the next 3 days, Nux doesn't particularly run into Pusher or Savant or Huvia. He doesn't hear from Lifter. He's mostly keeping to himself over those 3 days, and I'm sure he exercised and practiced a couple of the moves that he's learned from his boxing time.
Yeah, I think he's working on martial arts, and the idea of martial art being Zen. He's like starting to explore the idea of like the physicality of embodying the Order of the Void in himself.
Mm-hmm. And spent time playing with some of the, more advanced tools that he's learned from the chop decks, and he has sort of spent some time thinking about what he has learned about the Hastener's Fist and all of these different connections that he's made. On the 7th day after the Hasteners began building the buildings, Nux was informed separately, both by Lifter and Keeper Neo via messages, short-range comm messages on his chop decks, that a large collection of the Void Monks were gathering in the colony square outside of the garrison in some form of demonstration. And Lifter was the first person to reach out to Nux and let him know that some of the scouts had informed him that all of the Void Monks from the orphanage had all sort of gathered up, roughly like over 100 of them, and started walking through the streets towards the garrison. And at the same time, an untold amount of people in black cloaks began filling out of the Orpheus into the starport and into the streets of the colony, heading towards the garrison. And very, very soon after that, Keeper Seif called Nux and informed him that a group of 8 of the oldest kids in the orphanage were taken, not by force, but went along with some of the Void Monks to protest in their demonstration, and that she's concerned about those kids. And Nux is sitting essentially in his secret little bunker, getting these 2 messages back to back on like at 10 o'clock in the morning on May 12th, 2387.
Okay, so if it's shortwave communication, he has the ability to just reply, right? Like in line?
Yep.
Or are they one way? Okay. So yeah, once Lifter says that to him, he asks Lifter in short, like they've been talking forever. So he cuts the pleasantries, and he's just like, what do you think they're doing?
It looks like some kind of protest.
And then he kind of replies, do you have people in the area?
Oh, Nux, I've got people everywhere, but they're mostly infirm, elderly children. I mean,
yeah, this Varys' spiders kind of thing.
My operation is the shadows. We're not, militant. So if something goes bad, I would instruct all of my people to flee, honestly.
Yeah, and then he goes, thank you. And how far after Lifter's message does Neo's message come through?
Less than a minute.
Oh, okay. So like while he's talking to Lifter, he's like, hold on. And then he like picks up Neo's message, and once he hears that shit about the kids, he's like, his first instinct is like, were any of the boys taken? And
she goes, no, they're all here.
And then he replies, so the void monks that took them, they didn't force these kids?
No.
And then he asks, have you ever seen anything like this before? Do you know what they're doing?
I do not. I'm quite concerned, honestly.
All right, so Nux like kind of instinctively moves to the edge of his siege, and he's like starting to put on all his camo gear. So they're in front of the garrison, right?
Yeah, it's in the same location that Rom bombed everything.
Oh, Jesus. So yeah, the memories are coming back hard. He's just like, you can't lose any more people. So he asks, all right, let me think, because he's stealthy at this point. He doesn't want to draw attention to himself. He sees how big the crowd is. He sees there's a lot of people moving. He can probably hide pretty well. It's 10 a.m.
It's 10 a.m. and like Lifter in so describing is like it's not just the monks. There's hundreds of colonists gathering. They're all
okay, yeah, that's good. So after replying to Neo and understanding the details that he has, he goes, okay, I'm going to make sure we look after those kids. He goes, I'll be in touch. And then he calms out to Neo. He calms back over to Lifter and he goes, do you have good visual on everything going on there?
I've got bird's eye. I can see everything that's happening.
And then Nux goes, can I come over?
He's like, of course, dear boy.
All right. So Nux makes his way out of the siege and to the scrap depot.
And it takes Nux roughly about, we'll say, 15 minutes because word is starting to spread throughout the colony and like more and more people are starting to like kind of come out of their houses and business and going to see like what is going on with this protest of like 300 people standing in silence. And the military is starting to get concerned and like they're starting to garrison up. And when Nux gets to the scrap bank, he definitely sees that there are no security guards blocking the entrance to the doorway.
Oh, wow.
And when he gets inside, he sees that Pusher is standing there with Lifter watching through these like little video screens of like what's going on. And Nux for the first time sort of sees the scale of like what's going on here in this large crowd of people.
Okay, and then I think on his way over to Lifter, he's probably going to calm into Savant, make sure he's got eyes on everything, and he's probably going to. I guess you want to role play that one real quick.
So he calls Savant.
Yeah, he calls Savant.
Savant, like all of a sudden, the holographic image in front of Nux's face appears from the chopped decks, and Savant's like, "Hey, you watching this?"
Yeah, he's like, I was just about to ask you. I'm heading to the boss's office now. What do you know about this? What's going on?
I mean, like Lifter messaged me earlier, and you know, just maybe like 10 minutes ago, it was about the same, like just like right around the same time. Nux talked to him.
Yeah, he kind of did like an all points.
He just gave me a heads up. So honestly, me and Juvia gonna stay inside. I think. I mean, and then in the background, Nux hears, or in the call, Nux hears Juvia be like, "Unless something pops off, if something pops off, I'm getting my fists dirty."
Yeah, and Nux like he wants to feel the smile come to his face, but he doesn't, and he goes, "All right, yeah, let's be in touch. I'm really worried about those kids they took from the orphanage." And he calms out.
As he calms out, Savant's like, "Wait, what?" And then like Nux like clicks the comm off.
Yeah. So then when he gets to Lifter, he sees like Pusher and Lifter there without security, and then
actually, I feel like we should have him roll a mobility to get to them safely.
I mean, if the whole city's in chaos, like trying to get to this, I think it'd be pretty easy to.
Yeah, I'll give him a +2 to the mobility, but roll it anyways, just for posterity's sake. Okay, so yeah, Nux very successfully makes it from his apartment to Lifter's thing.
Yeah, and that's true too. He's like literally like talking on his cell phone the whole way. Okay, so yeah, he gets down the stairs. He sees Pusher and Lifter. He's like, Pusher, I didn't expect to see you, and I'm glad you're here.
And he's just like, where else would I be, kid? Looks like the sky's falling out there.
He's like, well, at least it's not raining fire. And then he saddles behind them.
Lifter turns to look at Nux and he goes, "Do you know anything about this? Have you talked to your nuns?"
Yeah, he's like, yeah, nuns don't know what's going on. They're very concerned about 8 boys who were taken. And to be frank, I am too.
On the holo screens in front of everybody, Nux sees that there are probably like maybe 30 to 40 PMAC soldiers that are like sort of posted up behind like these tanks that have been pushed out in front of the garrison's front doors.
Jesus.
And there are another maybe like 20 or 30 military guards standing at the top of the garrison walls. And the like roughly 300 people in black are all sort of doing the same sign that they did outside of the orphanage, which is the sign of the void,
and the fist,
and then a fist forward. And they're doing it all in sync, and they're chanting, and they're humming, and they're doing these hymns and stuff. And I'll say that there's too many people in the crowd for Nux to like really pinpoint any of the kids. Like, even though he's like,
oh, it's that dense. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, hundreds, because there's also probably like 200 colonists just like milling kind of about on like the edges, like watching to see what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of experiencing this for like maybe like 3 or 4 minutes before the chanting of the Void Monks rises and swells, combining into a solemn hymn, like a funeral dirge. Everyone in the crowd repeatedly harmonizes together, raising their arms to the sky in the sign of the order and dropping to their knees. From within the crowd, a clap begins to arise to accompany the song of the Divine Void. At once, the black-robed figures freeze and their voices fade. From the rear of the collective, a line in the middle begins to part, separating further up through the group towards the waiting garrison of soldiers and officers. Through the cameras, Lifter, Pusher, and Nux sees a group of 10 monks with chains over their shoulders, pulling a metal shipping container behind them. Standing on top of the shipping container is a void wraith. Bright red crimson mist pours out from slots running along the bottom edge of the container, surrounding the mob in a thick red cloud. The void wraith is a man, or at least a human, roughly 6.5 feet tall, wearing a horrifying black reflective armor. White fur runs along his shoulders and down his back into a cloak. His helmeted face is a dark crimson red designed to look like the skull of a demon.
Oh wow, so this dude's pretty fucking badass.
When 4 of the 10 monks pulling the container finally come to a stop, they let go of their chains and quietly disappear into the mob of black around them. A quiet pallor falls across the mob as they all turn their cloaked heads to look up at the wraith. When they do so, each commits the sign of the void, this time without the added motion at the end. Once they've all finished, they turn once again to face the garrison. During this time, the armored void wraith has said nothing and made no movements. Unsurprisingly, it's the representative of the PMAC military guard who speaks first. By order of PMAC Charter V2136, this is an unlawful gathering. State your business on this colony and the reason for this disruption. A brief few moments pass in silence before the void wraith finally speaks up. The voice heard is gravelly and enhanced through a speaker system within the man's helmet. If 2 warriors have the same duty, how does one decide who is right and who is wrong? Caught off guard by the question posed to him, the PMAC garrison commander looks confused and speaks privately for a moment with 2 of the other soldiers standing with him before talking back into the megaphone in his hand. Nobody. It is our conscience that determines our duty. Now, you are dangerously close to forcing my hand and initiating a martial lockdown. Your privileged backbone of control on this society is nothing more than a boot hill on these people's throats. We have done nothing other than exist here, and you threaten force. And the garrison commander's like, you freaks wouldn't show up here in a display like this if you weren't attempting to threaten our power. And the Void Wraith just kind of like waves it off with his hand, like, foolish! Grasping so tightly onto what you think of as power. It will all crumble to dust along with the walls of this garrison. Time will see it lay rotted, gutted, empty and forgotten. Yet you speak as if your power is the only one here. And the garrison commander's like, the PMAC will not be threatened by zealots. Smaller collectives of soldiers have put down greater forces than this. I will ask one more time, what is your purpose here? Like further moments of silence pass before the Void Wraith speaks again. Within your prison, you hold an angel of silence. Upon her head sits a crown of darkness. You stand now before a wondrous mountain closed in the dressings of hate, despair, and loss. We are the tidal wave that will wash across you in the blood of the void if Keeper Sif is not released immediately. Walk the Void Mother out of your oppressive walls. Bring her to me, or I will burn this colony and everyone in it to ashes. And there's pause before the Void Commander speaks back into his megaphone and says, coming here was a mistake. Religious charter or not, that prisoner committed a crime and she will face PMAC justice. There is nothing any of you can do to save her from that fate. Turn around now. Get back on your ship and leave, or experience the full force of the PMAC war machine descend upon you. Citizens of Chiensen, retreat to your homes for your safety. Now. Being on the streets any further, you do so at your own peril. And like the Void Wraith throws both of his fucking hands up and like stomps on the metal container underneath his feet, and he goes, our horns sound the arrival of your tears. Behold, as the stars in heaven, already dead and gone themselves, gaze upon the violence that moves to asunder you. Release the Void Motor. There will be no further negotiations. And the commander's like, you stand on ground without negotiating power. Your threats fall on deaf, uncaring ears, priest of death. Even now my men have been locking down and securing your precious orphanage. If this mob continues to defy galactic orders, leave. The buildings will be seized and everyone inside will be taken into custody. Disperse now or face the consequences. And like, swiveling over in a chair, Nux looks over and sees that like cameras that the lifter has on the orphanage show that there's at least like 60 PMAC soldiers, like basically guns raised, like surrounding the orphanage. And speaking further to the other PMAC soldiers standing on the top of the garrison wall with him, the commander gives an order that passes down the line to each soldier. Those who haven't fled yet watch as each man and woman raises up their standard issue assault rifle and attempts to steady their feet in the streets covered in trash and mud. As the Void Wraith screams, I rebuke your commands! I deny them! Humanity has no power over the will of the Void. If you will not release the Void Motor, then you will cry out to the heavens for the deliverance from the pain that we will birth upon you. Like, no longer interested in speaking with this fucking crazy person, the garrison commander instead prepares himself, along with his men, for what's to come. Upon realizing this, the Void Wraith begins a sermon. Our horns sound the arrival of your tears. And, like, all the soldiers are just, like, fucking aiming their guns at these motherfuckers now. And, like, there are just crowds of colonists just dispersing off into the streets, disappearing into buildings. Some of them are fucking not leaving. They're still lingering on the edges watching this shit.
Of course.
Behold, as the stars in heaven, already dead and gone, gaze upon the violence that moves to asunder you now for your acts of ignorance. His arms are like raised above his head. This colony is nothing more than a congregation of corpses waiting to be buried. And we, the murder of the Void's most faithful crows, are here to feast. This world once thrived. Looking at it now, it's an example of the waste and poverty and pathetic advancement of humanity. Once green, now a toxic, irradiated nightmare. A death trap. A dead end. Turned to trash like everything humanity sets its gaze upon.
While this sermon is going on, he's frantically like dialing through, like he's asking Lifter. He's like, "Hey, can you get me some audible comm? Can I talk to these people?"
And he says, "We've got no way to speak to these people."
And then immediately after saying that and talking to Lifter, he just like dials Savant. He's like, "Savant, I know you've given me so much. I'm hoping you can help me with this last piece. I need to talk to these people. Can you help me?"
Savant's like, "What are you talking about? What are you trying to do? What's your idea?"
And then he just like escalates. He's like, "Look, I don't know where you guys came from, but this is not going to go well. If we don't do something right now, this whole colony is going to turn to ash. And I think you know that."
And as Nux is having this conversation, because this takes time, this is also happening along with the other thing. On the video, Nux watches as the Void Wraith pulls a lever on his forearm and releases the chains that drag behind the remaining 6 monks, which all fall to the ground below. After pressing another button, all the chains unlock, allowing the leather bags around the monks' heads to loosen and drop to the ground. The 6 remaining black-cloaked monks that had been central to the group, pulling the chains, simply stand around, seemingly confused. And the Void Wraith says, "Bear witness to the first seeding of the infernal orchard, the blossoming of fire. We will spread this doctrine from planet to planet, washing away the future of mankind. Now, prepare your bodies for desecration." And as Nux and Lifter and Pusher and Savant and Huvia are all like connected via this like holographic communication and watching on their own separate screens, Savant is basically kind of like yelling at Nux like, "What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?" And like in the background, Huvia goes, "Oh my god." Or Nux hears Huvia go, "Oh my god, what is that?" And then like on all of the screens, and there's like this reverb going back and forth from the holographic communication between you guys, because there's screams on all the screens in Lifters, and there's screams on all of the screens in Savant's apartment that erupt as the colonists see what has been waiting for them in their midst, when the black cloaks covering the 6 heads are pulled and removed by rotted, graying hands. A cold chill runs from Nux's stomach to his heart as his mind immediately recognizes what he's looking at. 6 Ambrosapiens. Squids fused to their faces with writhing tentacles hanging from their jaws. As each of the creature's eyes gaze through the clouded crowd, he watches as the cloaks fall from their bodies, and thick, clear plastic bags hang loose around their torsos and arms and chest. That all suddenly, and there's something just wriggling around all around inside of them, and at once the body bags around their torsos just burst, and Nux realizes that they weren't body bags, they were the flesh of these Ambrosapiens that had been so filled up with Ambro squids that they were ready to pop. And hundreds of these squids just start skittering around through the crowd, leaping up onto people dressed in the black cloaks, leaping up onto colonists, leaping up to attack onto soldiers. And the Chiansen sky, the colonists shriek and leap into the crowds, or the Ambrosapiens themselves shriek and leap into the crowds and start viciously mauling anyone that they can get their hands on. Immediately, the soldiers start firing into the crowd, Bullets tear through the black cloaks of void monks as well as the fleeing colonists who didn't follow the garrison commander's orders. The void wraith screams something and points to the sky, and one of the many hundred myriad of black-cloaked people shoots a flare up into the dawning evening sky, and but the light is this dark black that cascades the entire area in this polar gray. When this happens, hundreds of people dressed in black appear from within buildings around the garrison. They're all wearing white skull helmets and carrying weapons. At the same time, the closed metal shipping container beneath the Void Wraith's feet pops open slowly, and from within comes a great, soul-shaking, heart-pounding, otherworldly, violent roar. Exploding out from inside the shipping container is the one thing that could make Nux's heart sink even further than it already has. Moving lithely across the mud and trash-strewn streets is an albino shark wolf. The creature hesitates for no time at all before it charges into the chaos, ripping apart everything in its path. Laughing at the top of his lungs, the Void Wraith pulls forth a metal hilt from his left waist holster. Pressing a button on its handle causes an extended, slatted metal sleeve to extend upwards into the shape of a sword. Once it's completed, smaller rotating teeth pop out across the edges of the blade. The Void Wraith revs it up, a chainsaw sword in his hand, and rises it high into the air before leaping off the shipping container into the fray and cutting down soldiers and colonists before him.
In this frantic moment, Nux is trying to gain a purchase in something that he can tell is escalating beyond his possible control, having no idea what he's about to see. And he's screaming at Savant. He's like, Savant, I need you to help get me comms. And then they see what happens. Savant's screaming back at him. He's just like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And then as that's happening, he sees the cowls drop from these, what we assumed were people's heads. And then Nux just basically goes catatonic. He's watching it and he's realizing all the shit that he feared he brought home. And he's sitting there and he kind of stumbles backwards. He maybe stumbles into Pusher, who just
when Nux stumbles into Pusher, Nux's entire sense of the world, everything is collapsing in on him. There's a ringing in both ears.
Yep, exactly.
And literally his vision starts pressing in from both sides. And Pusher, who was already completely just enraptured by what he was staring at on the screen.
He's
his
curious,
jaw
right?
drops, just eyes wide out, looking at him. And Nux kind of bumps into him, and Pusher turns and goes, "Hey, whoa, buddy, you all right?" And Nux literally is so dizzy that he tumbles down to the ground onto his knees, and he's on his hands and knees, and he's staring down at the ground, almost fucking dry heaving. Essentially, is his vision is becoming a pinpoint.
He's staring at the ground. He's hyperventilating almost. He feels this sense of rage and despair and just utter agony flow through him. And he's sitting there hoping that he gained a purchase in life and realizing that no matter where he goes, this shit's going to follow him. And as he's working through this, he's dry heaving and he just starts screaming. He just starts fucking shouting so fucking loud that I'm sure it surprises everyone considering how charming and quiet he is. So as he's sitting there on the ground and his tunnel vision is happening, he starts to see red on the fringes of his eyes and he just starts screaming.
Roll a stamina for me to see if he passes out.
Here's a good formula. A good formula is he asked Lifter to help. He can't. Stress 1 is seeing the Void Wraith. Stress 2 is asking Lifter. Stress 3 is asking Savant and freak out. Okay. And you said, what'd you want me to do?
And then I feel like seeing a shark wolf is a stress. Seeing the Ambrose Sapiens is a stress.
Okay, that's 5. That's it.
Yeah,
yeah. What was it? What'd you want me to roll?
Stamina.
Oh, stamina.
Because that's all health related stuff.
Yeah. All right, here we go. This is going to be a wacky one.
He's going to get it. He's going to get it. Yeah, he's going to get it. So he does not pass out. So, as he's kneeling down screaming, he kind of lets the scream fade out, and he's still hyperventilating, and then walk me through how he kind of comes back from this and what he says or does in the immediate aftermath before.
Okay, I think as soon as he screams, he starts pacing the room. He's like putting his hands on the back of his head, and he just starts mumbling to himself like really fucking fast. He's like, I can't believe I ever thought I was a Hastener. I can't believe I ever thought I was a Hastener. And like he's sure that no one else knows what he's fucking talking about. But he's like sitting there and he's just like, yeah, but it's Voltaire. It's Voltaire. If he's coming for his
Pusher's like, breathe, buddy, breathe, buddy.
And as he's like running through this logic, he's just like, they're fucking wrong. They're fucking wrong. And like he's like working through it. He's just like, so what his logic is basically coming to the conclusion of is that the simple fact that Voltaire has showed up to claim a right over the Void Mother Sif is just like, no, that's love. That's caring. That's need. And he's just like working through this idea that the Hasteners are fucking wrong. But what's funny is he's actually not focusing on how they got the biological weapons that they have, whether or not they're the progenitors, whether or not they created that, whether or not they foster. That almost means nothing to him. What means something to him right now is ideology. He's like so focused on that. Okay, so as he's mumbling, he's like running through the room. Pusher probably says something to him.
Yeah, he's like, breathe, buddy, breathe, buddy, breathe.
And then Lifter, probably having never seen a kid in this state before, what does he say?
Lifter has essentially like done the opposite. Lifter's eyes are still on the screen, but they have taken a seat on the blood orange couch again and crossed their legs and lit a cigarette, and they are patiently, quietly watching the scene. And as Nux is sort of having this panic attack, walking back and forth, running through all of these options in his mind, and Nux can hear the screams and the gunfire on the television screen next to him, and he can hear from the holographic choptex on his wrist that is like flashing a like image back and forth of like Juvia and Savant as he like walks back and forth. He's not holding it up in front of his face, and he can hear Savant like, "What's happening, Nux? What is going on?" And also at the same time, Pusher's behind him like, "Breathe, buddy. You gotta breathe. You're gonna pass out. You're gonna pass out."
Yeah, and so Nux, upon hearing this, he kind of like snaps himself back into order. He just starts remembering like his survival instinct and what he came to do and what he's hoping to achieve. He's just like, the idea of saving Keeper Sif has nothing to do with anything at this point, and he's like starting to center his mind around the boys, center his mind around the Order of the Void, center his mind around Neo, and he like looks at Neo, he looks at Lifter, and he looks at Pusher, and like in his state of panic, they see that as he starts coming out of it, like taking one step out of his own insanity, like his PTSD is fucking triggered, dude. Like this is like the darkest possible outcome of something that he was hoping to be the most positive thing ever, and he just like looks up at them with like berserk level rage, and his teeth are just gritted almost to the point where like he's like he could like pop a tooth or like make his gums bleed, and he just like looks at Lifter and he looks at Pusher, and he's just like, we have to save these people.
And then it goes beep 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 from his choptex, and he looks down and he sees that he has a short range call coming in from Keeper Neo,
and he pulls it up in the middle of it, knowing that Lifter and Pusher haven't responded, and he's just like, I'm so sorry.
He sees Keeper Neo's panic face, and she's standing in the grand foyer of the large room, and
with the sand.
With this, well, he can't see the sand, but he sees that.
Yeah, he knows. He knows.
Yeah,
that's
he knows. Yeah,
okay.
that's that room. She's standing in the center of that room, and he can see that behind her, not only are the other keepers sort of like rallied up by a bunch of PMAX soldiers, but like all of the children are as well. And Nux can hear all of the children like murmuring and stuff. And when Keeper Neo sees Nux's face, she immediately goes, "Oh, Nikolai, I was wrong. Eli's gone. He went with the older boys. He went to the garrison. Nux, he's out there."
Are you okay?
I'm all right. The children are all right. The police the military have locked down the orphanage. We don't have anybody else out there. You're the only one that can find the kids, if they're even still alive.
Is Neo speaking openly through her, like, how is
she's
she,
like trying to keep it hidden from the police because like, or the military, because they're all sort of like busy like wrangling all of these kids and the other keepers, and she's like got her back turned to it all.
okay, so she's not trying to expose that she's talking to someone.
Right, yeah, no, they're in trouble. Like, they're all in trouble. Like, make it very clear, like, they're in trouble.
Okay, so Nux in his like his rage-filled logistical mind is starting to snap into focus, and knowing that they are at least as far away from things as possible, he just shouts. He's like, "Keeper Nyo, seal everything. Don't let any entrance in the orphanage possible. What's coming, they can go through everything." And he just gives her like this cryptic statement, just like, seal everything. The PMAC will let you do it. They need it too. They'll see how fucked up this is. And then he calms out. He's like, I'm going to try and find Eli. Keep the others safe.
She doesn't even get a chance to respond. Like, she looks over as she sees a group of the military sort of walking towards her, and like Nux just watches as she turns the screen off. Yeah,
what's Lifter and Pusher doing?
They're looking at you. What does he say to them?
He goes, I think everything we just went through builds to this. I think I need your help now more than ever. And I have to get Eli. I have to get Eli. I have to get Eli. And we have to make sure this colony makes it, because, and then he's doing that thing that he had been doing before, where he found peace in the void. And now he's realizing that the void brings so much death, and he's not prepared for that. He wants to end that as quickly as possible. Right now, he's trying to understand whether or not the biology of these creatures stops them from attacking Hasteners or not.
He can see on the screen that they're attacking everybody,
including the Hasteners, including the Void Monks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as he's watching this happen, he's realizing that the idea of entropy being hastened is just a disgusting idea, and he's like shuddering at himself. He looks at Pusher, and he has this like pleading sort of look in his face. He looks at Lifter, and he's like, I don't know what you've been through in the past. I've seen these things before, at least something like them. And he like points to the screen, and he goes, it's indiscriminate. They're not going to stop until everything on this colony is destroyed.
Lifter has finished their cigarette, and they lean forward and like tap it out on the ashtray before standing up and like tugging on the bottom of their like waistcoat and looking over to Pusher and saying, this colony has faced strife before and come through the other end. We will do so again. And he like, the Lifter then like walks over and like presses a cobblestone on the wall, and like the wall like swivels to the side, and a bunch of lights come on like the ceiling, and Nux sees that like this is where Lifter's fucking secret armor has been the whole time, and it's just fucking like guns out the ass, armor out the ass, grenades, ammo, fucking everything that like a soldier fucking brigade could possibly need.
Yeah,
and, like,
speak
Pusher
calmly and carry a big stick. Yeah.
Pusher walks up behind Nux and puts his big hand on Nux's shoulder, and he goes, we're gonna help you find those kids, bud.
Nux kind of looks at Pusher, and he kind of has this like look of bewilderment. In a way, his childish instinct always said there was more to these guys than they ever let on. And he looks at Lifter, and he goes, whatever it takes.
And we will pick up on November 10th to see what
Rage
it takes.